Hey everybody, welcome back to the Saltworks podcast. We are so glad that you're here today. We have a wonderful story. Today on the podcast is Chase Nance, and he just has the most powerful testimony. I cannot wait for you to hear it. Just from going through years of looking for this acceptance and this love and these answers that we all have. We all have these longings, and wrestling with God is the way he describes it, and just basically dealing with anger with the God of, do I even believe in this God? And it's just such a moving story. I cannot wait to share it with you. And so here's our conversation with Chase. Chase, welcome to the Saltworks podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's been so fun. We've had to be like, okay, let's stop talking and record now, which technically we have been recording. So if you cross us, we're going to put that out. Okay, so first of all, it was fun to me to hear. I mean, I just assume, and I'm sure you have shared parts of your testimony, like with students and here and there, or maybe even in a sermon, but it was fun to me to know, like, you don't feel like you've actually shared your story in its entirety before. So this is the first time.
Yeah. So this will be the first time that I have really just sat down and told it to an audience.
Yeah.
I guess there are times, obviously, in ministry that a personal testimony is extremely powerful, and I have absolutely shared my testimony with small groups of students, just to I guess relate to them, or just to prove to them that I am not perfect, as much as I would really love to be. And so for me, that is the idea of the testimony, is just getting on the same level as a fellow sinner, and glorifying a God that loves me regardless. So
yeah. Well, that's exciting, and I know we want to handle certain parts with care, and so we'll do that today. And but we're excited that you're here. And Lindsay, you're on with us today too. Let's say good morning.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Just quietly sit over here and listen
That's
in.
fine too. Whatever you feel like today.
No, I do want to say, like, I think you coming on and sharing your testimony is powerful, and the fact that you're a student minister, so like you've had the opportunity to share that with students. But no, we kind of mentioned, like, me being in the middle school world for a time. Like, I think it's important for kids of all ages to see that, like, adults are not perfect. Like, I mean, even with my 5-year-old, I had a conversation with her yesterday that, like, hey, mom makes mistakes too. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, I'm a sinner, you're a sinner, and which kind of blew her mind in a minute. She was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I was like,
how dare you?
Like, what? Explain that to me. And I was like, look, we all make mistakes. Like, that's why we need Jesus. And I think that's important, because I think a lot of kids, and especially that age group, like, they just, I don't know, I feel like they probably just see grown-ups.
Yeah.
And don't realize, like, no, we all have things. Like, we all have things, and we're all,
might not have had the same apps you have now,
right?
But
yes.
Like, we get the feelings,
I think what's interesting about that, though, is like younger kids will always assume that adults are perfect, and then once they get into like their teen years, they just assume that adults are just trying to pretend to be perfect. And for me, that's I don't think that should be the case.
Yeah,
I think everybody should know that
we're
we're all imperfect together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I didn't ask this, and I meant to ask this, but who is Chase Nance for people who don't know you?
Like, oh, hey, I am Chase.
I know you just kind of jumped in.
Yeah. So I'm from Blanchard, Louisiana. If y'all don't know where that is, it's close to Shreveport. I went to Bird High School. C.E. Bird.
Oh.
From
we'll edit that out. That's
yeah. Okay. Let's not edit it. Okay. So that's where I went to high school, and then I am currently, or I came over to ULM for college, and now here I am serving in Monroe as the student pastor at North Monroe Baptist Church, and I have loved every second of it. So
yeah. And you have a lovely wife.
She's okay.
Yeah.
I'm joking. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. That's a joke. Hannah, I love you.
She can hear this. Yeah. No, she's great. And then you have an almost 2-year-old.
Almost 2 years old, Tiger James. He is, and I tell people this all the time, and I always get so annoyed when other people tell me how amazing and wonderful and great their children are, and how they have the greatest child ever, because I know they're lying to my face, because I have the most beautiful child, and I tell people all the time, I don't say anything, or I can say so many things about him, but he is just beautiful. Like, he is just the most beautiful child on the face of the earth. He's got that blonde hair. We don't know where he gets it from. He's all of his teeth are in, and so he's smiling all the time. And so
That's so
he is genuinely. I don't care what anybody else says. He is the most wonderful, most beautiful child
he
on
is
the
so
planet.
cute and on the move. I mean,
So I don't think he's learned how to walk yet. He went from crawling to running. He went straight into sprinting.
yes. Yeah.
And so and he's recently gotten into jumping. We've been
Oh
spending
yeah.
some time at altitude. I think I'm
Yeah.
going to have to get a membership there,
Absolutely.
which is
Yeah.
apparently a thing that you can do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's awesome. He's wonderful. And I don't mean to just like look over like my wife being mentioned. I do believe that the Lord has blessed me with just the most wonderful
Yeah.
wife, and she is honestly, I believe that, and I guess in my testimony you'll hear it in a little bit, but Hannah is part of the reason that I'm here today in the
Mhm.
position that I'm in, and I'm not just grateful for her, but I look up to her, and I am constantly just blown away by her,
Yeah.
at all points of her Christian walk, and just and I am so honored to be married to her,
Yeah.
and that she said yes to marrying me. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I love Hannah. She's the best. Okay, so you told us where you grew up, but just I know we're not really going to go into childhood, but just if you could kind of set up before we get into, say, high school, like just, what are some feelings you carried with you going into adolescence and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I grew up in a household that we did not go to church. I do remember there was a small stint where we went to a church in, I think it was also, I think it was outside of Blanchard. I think it was in Shreveport. It was Trinity Heights Baptist Church, and I remember playing basketball there as a younger kid. But that was maybe 6 months to a year
Mhm.
of my childhood. Um, and for the most part, we didn't go to church. In fact, I remember us leaving that church more clearly than I remember us being at that church.
Hmm.
And anywhere you go, there's gonna be people, and I think that we covered it a second ago, that we are all imperfect,
Yeah.
and that there are people in the world who are hypocrites. I myself am a hypocrite. I myself am a sinner, and whenever we left the church, that was the reasoning behind it, was um, that my parents would see one person act away on a Sunday morning, and then the rest of their week
Mhm.
um, was lived another way. And
Yeah.
so I remember very clearly the way that sort of ended, and then
Mhm.
more specifically my dad's bitterness towards the church. And so it was at that point that I started to kind of feel this animosity towards the church, that
Yeah.
um, that I was, and I know that I wasn't, but as a kid, I felt like I was kicked out almost.
Mhm.
But it was my parents that were pulling us out of the church at that point, and but yeah, that was kind of my first experience with church. I went to a D now as a kid, maybe in the sixth grade. It didn't stick.
Yeah.
It didn't stick.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the mentality growing up. Now,
Yeah.
I want to say that, and without getting into too much detail, that like any parents, my parents made mistakes.
Mhm.
A lot of times we look back and we see the mistakes that our parents made, and we focus only on that. I'm guilty of that as well. However, there were also great parts to my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
There were wonderful parts to my childhood, with especially my mom being involved with, and my dad as well. And so, with that though, looking back on specifically the bad parts,
Yeah.
and it's really easy to focus on the bad parts
Yeah.
for me. Once again, without getting too much into my testimony, or how I was raised or parented, it was really easy for me to focus on the bad parts.
Yeah.
And with that bitterness, and I guess it was kind of the turning point, was whenever we left that church, and that bitterness from me towards the church and towards my parents, even,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of built me up in this, I guess, in this life of anger. I was
Mm-hmm.
mad.
Mm-hmm.
I was a very mad kid. I had a
Yeah.
short temper at all times. And I do know that it was because I was mad at my dad.
Yeah.
My dad and I, we didn't agree a lot of times, and
You
we
think
would.
that was fair for you to be mad at the time?
Yeah,
Like,
I
yeah.
think I think so. I think
Mm-hmm.
so. We would constantly butt heads, and
Mm-hmm.
he was dad, um,
Mm-hmm.
and so he would always win the argument or whatever it was. And so, um, at that point in my life, I felt small. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I was just little, and
Mm-hmm.
my dad was big, and
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I've harbored some animosity towards my dad, and also with leaving the church, some animosity towards the church.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that's kind of how I was brought up, when this just mad.
Yeah.
Um,
How did those feelings, Chase, like affect the way that you had that view of the church, you had that view of, your parents to a degree, especially you mentioned your dad, but like, do you remember thinking concrete thoughts about how you felt about God or Jesus? Like, did that extend as well?
so, and I wasn't going to dive into this, but I guess we can. Um, I mentioned D now a minute ago, and um I remember at that D now, that preacher, he had me so convinced, just so convinced, that there was a God, and that he loved me, and his name was Jesus, and that my life would change if I would just follow after Jesus. And I remember going home and nothing changed. And so, me as a kid, I created this idea in my head that that preacher was a liar,
Mm-hmm.
and that his God doesn't care about me,
Mm-hmm.
and that I am better off alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why I was so mad all the
Yeah.
time. I was just so angry that I just wanted to be cared for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just wanted to be loved,
Yeah.
and the people in my life who I was supposed to be receiving that love from, specifically fathers,
Mm-hmm.
um, my heavenly father, my earthly father,
Mm-hmm.
I did not feel uh, that I was getting that love,
Yeah.
that everybody around me said that I already had.
Mm-hmm.
And it was frustrating,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really hard just as a kid to really process the fact that this God that loves everybody has overlooked me.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really hard to feel a strong word like love when you don't feel safe. Like, whether that's physically or emotionally, like
Yeah.
different people, different stories, but like that, like if you don't have that, like you don't feel like you can be yourself, or you don't feel like, you know, you can walk in without having conflict, or, I mean, some people have abuse. Like, I mean, just with different things like that, it can be hard to feel loved,
Yeah.
like when you can't even feel safe. And so I feel like I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. Now, when did you know that's your view of church, that's your view of God? Because that's what you've seen, that's
Yeah.
what you've experienced. And I think that's so important for people to hear, because people listening have felt that and don't know how to say it without feeling like, oh, I don't know if I can, or maybe feel it right now, and like that's just so hard, because it feels like one of those taboo things you can't say, but then it's like, well, how are you going to move forward if you can't admit where you are?
Yeah.
And so I think that's so important. But I know at the same time, at some point, you knew you wanted to work with kids. So you can move the mic around if you want. um, and at some point, you wanted to work with kids. So, like, what did that look like? At the same time, this is going on. What led you in that direction?
So my, I believe my whole life um, has not been so much ministering to the kids that I currently minister to, but my whole life has built up to ministering to the kid that I was. Um, and so I look back on that kid, and that the thought is very clear. It's I nobody else should ever have to feel this way. And
Mhm.
so I just remember I was always just I was just always great with kids, and it was because um, I would always approach relationships
Mhm.
with the mentality that I wish somebody would treat me this way.
Mhm.
Um, and and so for me, just feeling like I almost missed out
Mhm.
on childhood, or a loving childhood,
Mhm.
which and I really just I don't want to do that justice. I know, looking back on the situation, that there were people that loved me,
Mhm.
but as a kid, in that headspace, it's just um, it's hard to look back and and see all of the things that have happened,
Mhm.
and all of the things that have been done to me,
Mhm.
and then know for sure that there's somebody out there that does love me.
Yeah.
And anytime that I approached a situation with another person, it was always, I wish somebody would treat me this way.
Mm.
I really wish that I had been treated this way as a kid. And that's sort of whenever, and I would say that it was early high school years
Mhm.
that I kind of got in the mentality that this is what I am supposed to do. Is I am supposed to be there for kids uh, that are in the same situation that I was
Mhm.
in. And so it kind of it started off with pitching lessons. I loved baseball. I'd still love baseball. Texas Rangers. I love those guys. Corey Seager, I love you if you listen to this.
He's an avid
Yeah,
listener.
he's
Yeah.
an yeah. I
So it
thought so.
works. Yeah.
Adolis Garcia, I have your jersey. You're great. Um, anyways, but I loved baseball, and that's kind of where I started. I would teach pitching lessons.
Mhm.
Um, for the kids around the ballpark, and their parents would pay me, and it was like a small little summer gig or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and then from there, I laugh about this, and it doesn't have to be in there in the podcast
Oh,
or
it's
whatever.
gonna
But
be in there.
my so my first job ever was sandblasting oil rigs. I don't know if you've ever run a sandblaster.
No.
They are the worst, and
Is it
so
like
we'd
a
be
pressure washer?
we
I've done that, but
we would wear a hood. You'd wear a hood that pumps air, and I guess oxygen. I don't know, just pumps air into this hood. And what you would do is you would lay down on your back. That's what my job was. I would lay down on my back with this sandblaster. It was a hose that shot sand, and the whole point was just to get the rust off of metal. And it would shoot the sand, and it was every bit of 150 degrees under those
That's
rigs.
not a real job. They just told you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, that's the thing though, is it's I don't even remember ever getting paid for this job. But I do know that I worked two shifts, because the first shift I said, surely, surely we've finished all the sandblasting and we can move on to something else.
Mhm.
And then the second shift, I was just beside myself. I'd never quit a job before, and yeah, I walked up to my boss and I was just like, "Hey, this is by far the worst thing that I've ever done in my life. And I will not be back for a third day. This is terrible. Um, and so I remember I got home and I had just quit football, and my dad, he told me, he said, you are not going to go throughout your high school experience without playing a sport and not having a job. And so you got to go get a job. And I landed, and I'm so lucky. I just, as a kid, I was so lucky. I was maybe 16. I was 16 at the time because I was
Mhm.
driving. And I had landed a job at the swim school in
Mhm.
Shreveport. And we taught swim lessons, ISR, all that good stuff. I actually, I hate to give myself a shout out here, shameless plug. I actually helped write some of the ISR stuff.
Wow.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool.
and yeah, it was a chapter of my life that I look back on so fondly. Like I I, I look back and like, um, and I guess it plays into my testimony a good amount, because like this was genuinely the first place that I had ever been to that loved me for me,
Hmm.
that I could walk into, and I could, um, I could just be myself. And the owners there, Paul Oberly, who was one of the legends of scuba diving, he taught me what I know about scuba diving. And
Mm.
Mary Catherine Oberly, who was just, that was his wife. She was the owner. She also wrote the ISR stuff. And um, I remember, Elaine Ramos was her name at the time. And I don't remember what her name changed to off the top of my head, but Felicia in the front desk. Like, I remember all of these people, all these wonderful, wonderful people who just poured into me,
Mm.
who were um, not Christians,
Yeah.
not Christians at all, which kind of plays into this next part. Um, was These guys were the first people who just showed me love with no
Mhm.
strings attached, and I think because of that, I soared. Like I was. Um, absolutely all in. I picked up
Mm.
as many shifts as I possibly could. I loved working with the kids, and teaching them swim lessons, and working with a kid from who was walking in because their parents were dragging them into the
Mhm.
pool house,
Mhm.
scared to death of the pool, and then you know 2 months later they're swimming across the pool by themselves. And
Mhm.
it was once again one of the most amazing jobs that I've ever had in my life.
Mhm.
If I could like pay my mortgage and work there again, I absolutely would. But once again, the people there weren't Christians except for one guy, and I'll get to him in a second. But most of the people there were they worked from a very clear worldview. It
Mhm.
was um, it was that you needed to work hard, and then at the end of your life, you die and nothing happens. And that was the general consensus. Like this was
Mhm.
it was so much more than just like a group of work friends. It was like these were the people I hung out with,
Mhm.
because this was my group. This is you want to be in a place where you feel safe and you feel loved,
Mhm.
and this was my place. And so with these guys, it sort of started kind of shifting my focus, not really my focus, but my worldview from being this kid who was mad at the church, who was mad at his dad, um, into this worldview of, hey, this is our life, we live it, then it's over, and
Mhm.
and it's just that's it.
Mhm.
But there was one guy, his name was Robbie, and I don't remember his last name. I don't know what he does today, but I can attribute to him the guy who planted the seed in me.
Mm.
I don't remember his name, don't remember his last name. I don't know what he does now.
Isn't that crazy? Like,
I know.
like you can go through your service and be like, "Am I doing anything?" And it's like you might never hear, but you could be the person that plants that seed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he but it wasn't a loving seed. And that's kind of that was maybe not the issue here, but
Yeah.
i-
Okay, I retract everything I said. But you could do that.
yeah, yeah. But that's the thing though, is I can trace this all back to Robbie at the swim school in
Huh.
Shreveport
Wow.
whenever I was 16 years old. I wore this cross necklace
Hmm.
right here. I'm showing the screen a cross necklace right now
Yes. Yes.
for all of our radio listeners.
Yeah, for just
Um,
listening.
and I wore this cross,
Yeah.
and I remember one day he looked at me and he said, "You are not a Christian. What are you doing with that cross around your neck? You are not a Christian." And it hit me like somebody had just hit me square in the forehead with a brick.
Mhm.
um, because it started me asking those questions. Why am I wearing this cross necklace? What am I doing? Like, am I a Christian? No, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in what Christians believe. Um, and for the longest time, I took it off. I took off this necklace, and I had no desire to put it back on because I did not believe what a Christian believed, and I had no interest, especially if the Christians that I um, was in contact with, the one Christian that I had regular contact with, would call me out and
Mhm.
take me away from this safe space, this loving space,
Mhm.
and tell me that I can't wear this cross necklace because I'm not a Christian. And it was just another one of those things that just made me so angry with the church. Like,
Mhm.
why do I have to believe what you believe to do or to go where you go after you die? Like, why is it that I have to believe these things?
Mhm.
If God seriously loves me, then he'll accept me for whatever I am and whoever I am. And that's as simple as it is. That was my thought.
Mhm.
And now, praise God, I know that is uh, that I know that God loves me regardless of my situation, but he loves me too much to keep me that way.
Mhm.
And that was just something that I could not see as a
Mhm.
kid. And I'm saying as a kid, I was 16, and I do believe that that is still a kid. Um,
Well, it is so easy to hold that either or. Like either you accept me totally or you reject me,
yeah,
and it's like the older we get, the more we're able to hold the both and. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, yes, you love me, and yes, you love me so much that you're shaping me into your image. Like
absolutely.
eh,
I think about it like this. Like, I love my baby so much. I love Tiger so much.
mhm.
Um, but I love him too much to let him play in the dryer. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, I'm not I'm
Yeah.
not gonna let him go climb in the dryer and shut the door on himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was kind of the, I guess, the situation that I was in. Was I
Mhm.
was climbing into the dryer.
Mhm.
I was playing around in a place that I shouldn't have been in at all.
Mhm.
And the first seed that was planted in me was, and I mean, I look back on it, it wasn't a loving seed,
Mhm.
but I think that it was totally necessary because, I mean, here I am 10 years later, and I'm
Mhm.
thinking about that seed that was planted.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's crazy how we look back on our lives and just see how God was working through all of these things.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Well, it's just like I it was on the tip of my tongue to say like it's so classic for teenagers, but honestly anyone for just not to think about those things. Like you just go through the day that's in front of you, you live for today, and not
yeah,
think about what you really believe. And so it's kind of like it forced you to be like, do I?
yeah,
No, I don't. Like to take a stance, which ultimately is good because you're having to face, you know what I mean,
yeah.
what you think. So um, okay, so what happened next that kind of shifted that, like kind of rocked your worldview? Um,
So after, and this is, I mean, it's a really big part because up to this point, I was just like, I was a lukewarm, um, like whatever. I was a lukewarm atheist, I guess. Um, I I wasn't going to go out and tell people how God doesn't exist, but if the conversation rose, I was going to tell them that it's pretty obvious that, science and the world and, I really didn't have any actual backing to it. But it was my belief.
mhm,
And so I was 16, and then, so I was a junior. It was the spring of junior year. And so I had my swim school family, and then I also started going on my days off. I just really didn't like to go home. I didn't want to go home. Right down the street from Bird was a place called Rhino Coffee. And I loved that place. And I I don't, and I hate to make a Harry Potter reference.
Please do.
I was about to say.
We love
I
to see
hate to make a Harry Potter reference because, look, full disclosure, I'm not a Harry Potter fan.
Okay, we'll allow it.
But I think about, like, one of their main characters, Voldemort. I don't know if y'all know who that is.
Can't say
You
that.
can't say that
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
He who must not be named. He breaks apart his soul and he leaves his soul in different parts of.
Yeah, spoiler.
Oh my goodness. Well, sorry to spoil it for you guys. Honestly, if you haven't seen that part by now, like,
you've had
a lot of
yeah,
time. You've got plenty of time.
But if I was he who must not be named,
yeah,
Rhino Coffee would have a piece of my soul. Like, that would be a Horcrux for me. Like, that was that was.
I mean, for a second, that's not a Harry Potter fan. I'm like, you're dropping a whole lot of references over here for not a fan.
Just perfection.
Yeah. So it was genuinely, like, that was a place where I just felt so much peace. And there was this back patio, and it was cool to whenever I was a teenager, it was cool to smoke a cigarette, and everybody thought that was the greatest thing ever. And that's what we did, and we would just sit around, and it was the most ridiculous thing. Tiger, if you're listening to this in 15 years, like, I know every time you smoke a cigarette, you feel nauseous after. Like, I don't understand why people do that. But anyway, so we would just sit out there and we'd hang out, and we had this really big core group of friends, and it was we would hang out every single day. And I remember I would tell my parents that I'd created a study club at Rhino Coffee so that I could go and hang out there for like 2 or 3 hours after school, because I didn't realize how it was possible to love somebody so much, like to love a group of people with every fiber of my being. And we had the swim school, and that was a place where I found love and I found safety. But this was a group that I look back on so fondly, because these guys were a part of me.
It's almost like swim school is like, I found this purpose.
Yes.
But here, like, I don't have to do anything. I'm just accepted.
Exactly. And that was what was crazy, though, is because up until this point, like, I almost felt like in order to be accepted, I needed to do something. Like, for instance, at the swim school, I had to work there, and I had to, show up, and I had to be good at my job. And but here at Rhino Coffee, it was just, I mean, my soul just felt light. It just felt like I would just walk up and I would sit down on the patio, and I would be able to fully be myself. And the people around me are an extension of myself. And this is just how I felt. And it was the most beautiful, up until that point, it was the most beautiful earthly love that I'd ever felt, and I had ever just been a part of. But we live in an imperfect world.
Yeah.
And so one day, it was in October, I didn't even realize what was going on. And it's really tough, because you think about suicide, and you think about just how hard it would be to sit down and do something like that, and write out letters to people that you love. And uh I just I am at peace with it now. But one of our dearest friends, his name was Dakota. He was awesome. He was so happy and just cheerful at all times. And I know that now to not be the case. But he put on this beautiful front of just, he was just so fun to be around, and he was just always looking at the bright side, and he was always cheerful, and he would show up to Rhino, and he would always have something so kind to say about everybody involved. And one day he decided to take his own life, and that was the first time that I ever felt just crushed.
Mm-hmm.
That I ever felt like the weight of the world was coming down on me, because this was somebody I considered to be such a true, genuine friend
Mm-hmm.
who I I loved. I mean, I loved this dude. Um, he was awesome and cheerful and happy, and now he has taken his own life. Um, and I remember that whole situation, and just the feelings of anger that I had felt my entire life had now just bubbled over, and it wasn't a pot on a stove, it was a volcano. It was rage and anger and fury in every amount, and I just didn't know as a kid how to process this. um this guy that I hung out with, who I loved every single day, who I talked with just about every single day, has now taken his own life. And it's tough, I mean, to look back on, especially once again as a kid. I want to say I was 17. No, I was 18 whenever that happened. um, I remember I walked into my dad's bar, and um, he was friends with all the firefighters, and he just said, "Hey, did you know that guy Dakota?" Um, and I was like, "I don't know who you're talking about. What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, a guy named Dakota. I was a senior. He was uh, my brother's age, so he was 2 years older than me." Um, he said there was a guy named Dakota. He committed suicide, and I was like, I don't know any Dakotas that committed suicide. And I was I was just like, okay, well, whatever. I was on my way to play ultimate frisbee, and I always met up with Dakota there. That was our thing. We played ultimate. We had a group of guys that played ultimate frisbee at AC Steer in Shreveport, and we get there, or me and another friend of mine, we got there, and we're waiting around, and all these other guys are showing up. We're about to start. We're wondering, hey, where's Dakota? What's Dakota up to? And we start to blow up his phone, and we start to kind of realize that the Dakota that my dad was just telling me about was my Dakota. Like that is my, like, that is a part of me. Like this is my person, and I had no idea. And so it was another one of those things of, if the situation itself didn't already send me into this blind rage, it was just the fact that I had to find out from somebody at this point in my life who I did not get along with at all. Um, and that was my dad. He delivered this information to me, and it was tough. It was a really hard thing, and I would say it was a hard thing really for two reasons. And firstly, well, really for three. Obviously, we have the initial heartbreak of losing a friend, um, and having that person who was always there for you, always lifting you up and always building you up. He's no longer there, and
That safe space doesn't feel so safe.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so that's one of the things is that
Yeah.
a safe space here on Earth is not safe at all. Anything here can change in an instant. Um, eh, I mean, our lives are so fragile. And so you look at that idea of, now I no longer had this safe space. After this happened, my friend group, we couldn't look each other in the eyes. I think that, well, I think that I can think back to our very last conversation with a lot of the guys that were in this friend group, and the last conversation I had them was with Dakota. I mean, it was with this guy who I guess everything hinged on. Um, but the second reason is I had to deal with that that idea of my own morality, or not morality, but mortality. I had to deal with my that idea of my own mortality, and um, I really had to come to terms with the fact that either I was right or Robbie was right. Um, and I had to seriously sit myself down and think, um, what happens after I die? And that really, as a high school kid, it messed me up. I remember I did not want to talk to my dad about this. I had no interest in talking to my dad about this, but I remember I tried to talk to my mom about this, and I love my mom. I want to say I love my mom, and my mom has turned into this amazing Christian woman, she is at the church every Sunday. Really she has really come into this life as a believer in Jesus. Um, but I remember I was sitting down with my mom, tears in my eyes, asking her. I said, "What happens when somebody dies? Where do you go?" Actually, we were on the road to go watch my brother play a football game at Southern Arkansas, and we were driving up, and I just said, "Mom, what happens when somebody dies? What happens?" And she said, "Why do you ask?" And I could not form the words in my mouth to say that I had a friend who recently committed suicide. They had no idea that I was a part of this friend group, that I was friends with any of these people. I'd shared very minimal information with my parents. Um, and she said, "Why do you ask?" And I just said, I don't know. I'm just curious. And she said, "Well, I think it's pretty obvious that um, the universe works in a way that there's no way that there could be a God. There's no way." And so I'm now here mad at the church because they don't accept me. Their God doesn't accept me, or so I thought. Um, that I'm mad at Christians because they call me out. They take away my safe space, and um, they tell me that I'm not certain things. And now the person that I've turned to is now telling me that there is no God, and that science makes sense of everything. Um, and that was sort of my belief, was that everything, well, I say sort of, it was definitely my belief that whenever you die, everything goes black. And that scared me so bad. The idea that all of this is for nothing, that that we live this life, and our world is this temporary place for just people to live a miserable life and die. And that started in me this anxiety that was like nothing I'd ever felt before. Every time that I would think about it, every time that I would just be reminded of this anxiety would take over, and I wouldn't be able to think clearly, and I wouldn't be able to breathe properly, and I would fall into these panic attacks of why am I here? What am I doing here? Why do I need to do this? Why don't I just end it? Why don't I just end it now and just let it go black? Let's go dark. Um, and that was a really dark time in my life, because anytime that I tried to bring it up or talk about it, it was always You're probably just being dramatic, or
Mhm.
hey, you probably just need to eat. Go eat something, or go hang out with your friends. I have no friends, um, because we can't look each other in the face because every one of us are blaming each other for this horrible tragedy that none of us had a part to play in. I mean,
Mhm.
it's at this point in my life, I was so mad. I mean, I was angry. I could have spit fire. I was just mad at the world. I was mad that I didn't have the relationship with my parents. I was mad that I didn't feel safe talking with my parents like other kids could do. I was mad that I didn't have all the answers. I was so mad, and I was scared. Um, and a lot of times I hate to acknowledge that, just the fact that I was scared, um, because I didn't know, um, and I felt like I was weak, and I felt like everybody else had these answers that I just didn't have, and I felt like I was behind, and from there, from that mentality, I I mean, looking back on it, the timing was perfect, because God's timing is always perfect, but I just remember thinking to myself that if I go to college in the state that I'm in, I will 100% be dead in a year.
Mm.
I will 100% have killed myself within the year if I go to college in the state that I'm in, but I cannot stay at home. Um, and that's a scary thought,
Yeah.
you know? That's a,
It's such a paradox too that I feel like a lot of people unfortunately can relate to, of like, in a way you're so angry with a God you don't really believe in.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
How can you possibly form that into words? Like, you can't say that.
And you can't justify it either.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
it's such a, you're right, it's a paradox because at this point in my life, I'm just like, everything's going to go black when I die. Let's just be done and end it. And at the same time, I'm also mad at God. Um, and so it
Because
was,
I think like there's a degree of that, and I don't know if this would answer some of that like weird dynamic, but like I mean, we were created by God, and so like who we are longs for
yeah,
eternity and longs for Him, and so when you're told like that is what our hope is, like our hope is in Him, and so like when you're told that doesn't exist or nothing happens when you die, like that you have no you don't have that hope, and then you're
yeah,
I feel like there's this part of us that like, and I mean, I haven't ever found myself in a place where like I don't believe in God necessarily, but like, or just like I'm actively opposed to that. But like, I have to wonder if like there's not some part of us that like deep down wants that to be true,
yeah,
because it is true. It is truth. And that is where our hope comes from. And so I don't know if that makes sense or not, but like
Yeah.
that, the
absolutely.
anger with God is like, no, I want you, like somewhere deep down, like, could it be that you're angry because it's like, I want you to be what you supposedly are, but it doesn't feel like you are that in my
Yeah,
life, I don't know.
Well, and when you don't really understand the way that he works, when you do allow yourself to think, it's like he seems so passive because you don't know where to look for him, and so it's
right.
like you there.
Yeah.
That feels uncaring,
Yeah.
But it is like, I think, such a profound point, because like what can look to the world like a surly 18-year-old is really like an image bearer
Yeah.
who recognizes they have eternity in their heart, and like, is
Yeah,
like grappling with the question of like, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Because that cannot be true.
right.
Yes.
You know what
Right.
I mean?
Like we were
Yeah.
created with a purpose, like, and so, yeah.
Yeah.
A quick message from our sponsors this episode. This episode brought to you by Fresca.
And also the Rangers. We forgot to
Yeah, yeah,
I
and the
know,
Texas
and the
Rangers.
Rangers.
State
Corey
that,
Seager,
yeah.
I love you. Please reply to this. Y'all, Corey Seager is so great. The dude is awesome.
You should tag him in it or something. I don't know how you do that. Can you do that?
I don't know.
I do have, so I have an Adalis Garcia jersey that is my pride and joy. I have it up in a very particular spot in my closet with like, I have spaces between the other shirts and the Adalis Garcia jersey.
Nothing
Um,
can touch it.
that's my jersey. I wear it to every Rangers game I go to, and I
That's
absolutely
awesome.
love it. But
That's so fun.
I was so hopeful this year. We didn't make the playoff, or we're not going to make the playoffs. But uh,
Yeah.
anyways,
Another year.
it'll happen next
No
year.
safe space.
No safe space. Yeah.
Um. Okay. Sorry, y'all. We had to take a break, but we're back. Okay. Do you feel like, because we're gonna go into college next, but do you feel like that has like empowered you and like encouraged you as far as like how to minister to the youth that you see every day? Because like they're having those feelings, like they're dealing with those things, and it can be so easy to be like, is that dramatic? But like you can't respond that way,
Yeah.
like I mean, what's considered dramatic, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So for me, okay, I'm just gonna say that I'm a really good pretender. I'm really good. I think that I'm not the best pretender out there, but I'm really good at pretending. And throughout my high school and really middle school experiences as well, I was really good at pretending that
Mm-hmm.
everything was great. I was happy. Everything was awesome,
Mm-hmm.
and I love everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that kids today are almost better pretenders. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
you have to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that goes on in their lives that is just so niche to them that that they have to be a great pretender.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
if
have to
they're
be
not,
on all the time.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's just it's exhausting, and I know that it's exhausting for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time that they have come to me with a problem, um, something is wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
we really got to get to the bottom of this. Um, but for me, in ministering to students, just looking back on my own testimony, I would I would almost say that I kind of believe them to a fault.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to me. Like whenever I really needed somebody, whenever I really needed help or
Mm-hmm.
advice or just somebody to help drag me out of this
Mm-hmm.
pit that I was in, um, it there wasn't anybody there.
Yeah.
Um, and once again, and I'll say this: my mom, she tried so hard, based off of what she believed,
Mm-hmm.
based off of
Mm-hmm.
what she believed, and so. There's no fault to her. I love my mom. She's awesome. Um, but yeah, that's just kind of how I tackle problems for students these days is just almost believe them to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to like the young girls in our ministry,
Mm-hmm.
is if they are bringing an issue to me and I just shrug it off, I have done them such a disservice,
Mm-hmm.
by just saying, "Oh, hey, you're making this up," or
Mm-hmm.
you're being dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
Because deep down, regardless of whether or not it's played out exactly how the student has said
Mm-hmm.
that it has happened, some version of what they're saying is true.
Their perception is their reality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, well, yes, we do our best to just push for the truth
Mm-hmm.
and make as much of an effort as possible to get to the most truthful
Mm-hmm.
part of the story. Um, we will always believe first
Mm-hmm.
and ask questions later.
Well, like to put it into this perspective, like if you think about getting on a plane and flying somewhere to a completely different people group and culture, you wouldn't get there and be like, "Y'all are being ridiculous. This is dumb." You know what I mean? And so, like,
Mhm.
why would you treat somebody here that way? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Right.
just, to you would go and you'd ask questions about their culture and you'd get to know, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like you'd show care, and um, we have to do that with individuals that you know, live
Well,
next door to us.
it's also the way that this like student culture is right now. Like you said, they're always on. That
I cannot imagine because like sometimes it stresses me out when people are just taking like candid photos, because you're just like ugh, like let's just let, like, for someone who does like a podcast and like speak, like it just sometimes it's like I just want there to be no phone time,
Yeah.
like I don't know, and I cannot imagine with students, like it is so much more. They're always phones out.
Right.
Everything gets recorded. Like that is so stressful
Mm.
to me.
Mhm. Well, and that's the thing for us is like with them always being on, by the time they've gotten to us and feel the need to say something to us, like something has gotten real enough for them to need to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something has been real enough for them to have to turn it off. And so, yeah, that's sort of my mentality going into it, especially looking back at my story is just, and then that's the other thing too, is you gotta remember that me being a great pretender as a kid through middle school, high school, nobody knew what I was dealing with. Nobody knew the things that I was struggling with. I tried to talk to my mom about it, and that just was kind of a bust. Um, Nobody knew, and so another thing that we always do, or I say another thing that I always do is I will constantly be checking in with students, always. Hey, how did your test go? How did Because if you brag too much, that's glazing, and if you don't say anything at all, then that's humble. And well, okay, well, if you fail a test, well, now you're stupid. And if you and so there's just so many dynamics that are just absolutely ridiculous with with student culture these days, that it's so important just to check in. Just always check in. If you're a parent hearing me right now, please check in with your students. Not everything is as great and wonderful as they're making it out to me most of the time. And
Oh,
so,
I was just about to say, I'm glad that you said that, because like my whole thought process right now is just thinking like how wonderful this could be for any parent who of a teen who's listening right now, because yeah, sometimes it can seem like on the surface, and a lot of times when, especially, we're not in teen years yet, but I mean, I remember teen years, like that your parents sometimes are the last people you want to talk to. But I think how important it is, especially entering into those teen years, that like as a parent, we leave that door open and we make sure that they know, hey, you don't have to pretend
yeah,
here, like, I don't know. So I'm glad that you said that, because that's where my brain was going, was
And
just
to
thinking like
like,
how important it is
yeah.
for the parent who's listening to just be
yeah,
reminded, like, hey, it's not always as
absolutely.
wonderful as it seems.
And to like not feel shame or feel like I don't know how to handle this, and to give you a call like, hey, can we come meet with you, or can he or she come meet with because like yes, like we want to be able to have that
Oh yeah.
open dynamic with our kids, but also like the church is a resource, you know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And like
Yes.
Bear, like when he was getting ready to make his decision to follow Jesus, like he was like, I think I'd like to talk to somebody in the church. And I'm like, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does not, that cannot be like, oh well, I feel like I failed,
Right.
like
Yes.
I'm like, great,
Right.
I feel excited about that,
Yeah.
because then you feel like the church is a safe place for you, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that was
Right.
great. Like Jordy said things to him I wouldn't have had the perspective of
Right.
saying. I didn't need those answers when I was his age.
Well, that's one thing that it doesn't break my heart, because I understand like kids will be kids, but one of the things that really, and it's hard to say what I'm trying to say. Like, one of the things that kind of frustrates me is whenever I get a text message from a student or from a parent that says, "Hey, I'm so sorry to bother you." Do you not realize that I want to be bothered? Like, I am here, and my job, there's quotes around that for those of you listening on Spotify. My job for me is so much more than a job. Um, it's it is an opportunity to love that student that feels like they're not loved. It's an opportunity for me to reach out and pour into students that maybe are having a tough time. And so for me, that message of "I'm so sorry to bother you," I really wish would turn into, "Hey, I'm coming up there and my son needs to talk to you right now." because we always have time for our students. We'll always have time for our students. We'll always have time for the parents of our students, for the little brothers and sisters of our students. What we do is just so much more than just showing up for a paycheck. Like we love our people. And yeah, it's just,
I mean, you're still teaching kids to swim, basically.
yeah, basically we're still teaching swim lessons. I'm redefining ISR.
So, okay, you moved to college, and to travel back to where we were before we started about student ministry, you have those beliefs of like, if I go somewhere in state, this is going to be the end. You're dealing with anger and, I don't know how you would define depression or anxiety, but, somewhere in there. And so what did that look like? How did you make that decision? And tell us about that season.
Well, so at this point, whenever it was time for me to go off to college, this anxiety in me, I found a way to cope with it, and that was to just turn everything off and go completely numb and not care. And so, in a way, that anxiety it turned into depression. I Obviously I wanted to just get out of my house. I didn't enjoy being at my house, but um, I just I just didn't want to do anything. I almost just said, "Hey, I'm not going to college. Like, I'm not doing any of this, or I'm not, I'm not hanging out with friends. I'm done." And in that state, that's kind of where I started having those thoughts of, if I leave for college right now, I would not make it a year. I wouldn't. I would I would do something to kill myself, or I would do something to just be done with life. Um, and that's the mentality that I entered into college with. Um, and so once I got to college, it was a little weird, because it was a glimmer of hope. And because as soon as I got to college, I was sought out by a couple of the guys in fraternities, and that was really cool to me. Like, I really am looking for a place to belong. I'm looking for a place to be accepted. Um, I am a young, uh, depressed, anxiety-ridden, mad 18-year-old at this point in my life, and it it was tough. It was a tough place to be in, and I was just the weakest prey that was on the college campus. Like, I was so weak, and I put on this facade that I just was so great and wonderful, and everybody should want to hang out with me and party with me and love me. Um, and that was so far from the truth. And so what ended up happening is I joined this fraternity. I joined a fraternity at ULM, and it was a place that I was accepted. It was a place that I thought that I was loved. I don't think that I was, looking back on it. It was a place that I made some really wonderful friends. I mean, one of my dearest friends, his name's Daryl Smith. He has always been just so kind and so wonderful, just a great guy, that I consider one of my best friends. I met him through that fraternity, but for the most part, that fraternity was another. It was almost another swim school, in the sense of, um, I had a place where I felt like I belonged, where people wanted to be around me, but at the same time, like, I had to do something to fit in here.
Yeah.
And that's not where I was introduced to drugs and alcohol, but it is where the drugs and alcohol really took root in my life. Um, because I thought that everybody else here is doing this. And in order for them to accept me and in order for them to continue to want to be around me, I have to do this better than them. And so every single party that we went to and every function, every tailgate, it was the most, and I'm going to say this, it was the most embarrassing version of myself that has ever existed. Um, I was talking to somebody the other day about, you know, why do we drink? Why do we drink in excess like that? And because I just, I don't know if I should say this. I guess I will. It's like,
Sure.
you know, you know, I mean, a glass of wine with dinner is fine. Like I'm not looking down on people who do drink alcohol. But I was talking with somebody the other day about, why do we drink in excess? Like what's the point? You don't remember it, and you wake up the next morning, you feel terrible. You're literally drinking gasoline. Like it tastes so bad. Why do we do this? And it really comes down to the fact that everybody else has done it. Everybody else is doing it. And for me, that was a good bit of it, was everybody else is doing it. But the flip side of that was, and this was what was really kind of scary for me looking back on it, was that this alcohol use, this drug use for me was more than just fitting in. It was getting harder and harder to push down the depression and anxiety.
It's an escape.
But the alcohol and the drugs made it so much easier. And so you can't be depressed if you can't remember.
Yeah.
And so that was the pit that I fell into. Was I am tired. I'm so tired of remembering. And I'm so tired of this burden that is still just weighing me down. I'm just so sick and tired that I just need an escape. And that's what it was for me. It was an escape. It was drugs, it was alcohol, it was partying, it was this thought that if I could put on this front that I am having a great time, and um I am I'm loving life, that maybe then I would start to love life and have a good time. And that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case at all. Um, and throughout all of this, and which I think is absolutely crazy, I think my wife is absolutely crazy. Because throughout all of this, I met my wife. I mean, in the middle of all of this craziness, like I met this. I mean, she is the light at the end of this tunnel for me, and at this point in my life, because I moved in a couple weeks early, and I'm starting to fall into this lifestyle with this fraternity that I've started hanging out with and started being around. And the first day of college, a friend of mine that had been hanging out with me for the last couple of weeks, and all this other stuff, like he said, "Hey, I want you to meet a friend of mine from high school." And I said, "Okay, cool, awesome, that sounds great." Well, I go into his dorm room, and there is Hannah. And we looked at each other, and I said, "I know you." And she was like, "I know you." Well, we went on a senior trip for like my family went on a senior trip. We went on a cruise. Her friend group went on a senior trip. They went on a cruise. And we had met one day, and this is ridiculous, but we had just met on the excursion that I went on. I was, I don't know how to say, I, I made some bad decisions. Um, and I came back from this excursion one day on the cruise with cornrows and teardrop tattoos hinted on my face.
Thank
And
goodness.
I was not. I was.
We
Yeah.
need to include that picture.
Yeah. So I think that there is actually a picture out there, and I don't want anybody to find
There
it.
should be.
So Um, on our senior
Like
trip,
sometimes we are thankful for cameras being there.
so on our senior trip though, that is the state that I came back onto the boat, and it was like I went on this trip with some family friends, like some guys that I was friends with, like through middle school, and our parents just really wanted us to continue being friends, and so we're like, whatever, we'll just go on this trip. And we came back, and I had these cornrows. I mean, full blown cornrows in my hair, henna teardrop tattoos. I think I had. I gotta find the picture. I gotta find the picture, and I'll show you. But I looked absolutely ridiculous, and me and like my family and my brothers and a couple of those other guys that were with us, they were like we were all in the pool, and Hannah and her friend group came down and started swimming in the pool, and so we started kind of hanging out with them. And so I think it's so funny that the first time that I met my wife face to face, I was not in the right state of mind. I had cornrows in my hair, and I had henna teardrop tattoos on my face. I looked ridiculous.
All this to say, students listening, you can't ruin God's plan.
You
You
cannot ruin
Hey,
God's
listen,
plan.
if it makes you feel any better, my now husband, when we first started dating,
I was
also
gonna say,
got
this
cornrows.
sounds
like
like
I
a
had
common
cornrows.
story,
Like,
yeah.
you can relate over the cornrows that
Separated
you
at
had.
birth, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So you aren't alone.
So back to that first day in the dorm room, my wife, my now wife, and I are looking at each other, and we're saying, "I know you from somewhere." And then, sure enough, she pulls up this picture of me with cornrows in my hair, henna tattoos.
So now you're
on my face.
indebted to her.
Yeah, and so I was like, "Hey, why don't we go out to dinner and let's figure out a way that you can delete that picture of me?" I'm joking. I'm joking. I did though. I asked her. I said, "Hey, do you want to go grab some food tonight?" And what's really crazy about this is we never once broke up. We never took a break. We never, which once again, y'all, we got to reassess Hannah, because what was she thinking? What was she thinking? With me in the state that I was in, I had no business being with somebody so awesome. And so that's where I was though. Is I was depressed. I was mad. I was anxious. I was all of these things that um, that really kind of are playing into what my life looks like at this point. And Hannah walks into my life. Now, my intentions were not great with Hannah. My intentions were not great. And what's really kind of funny about that is that Hannah told me that she was not going to hang out with me if I didn't come to church with her. Um, and so she said that I would that she would come and hang out with me, that we could date or we could hang out, but I had to go to church with her. And so I was like, whatever, fine. I don't know why I agreed. I do know why I agreed. She was awesome. But I walk in, or she brings me to church, and I walk in, and everybody was so smiley. Ugh. Yeah. Disgust. In parentheses, disgust. No, so I walk into this church, and once again, I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm mad. I'm just mad at the world. I'm mad at this God that doesn't care about me, who has overlooked me in every step of the way, who has had every opportunity to save my friend, to fix my friend groups, to make my relationships better with my parents. He had every opportunity. And so I walk into this church with a thought that A, either God doesn't care about me, or B, God doesn't exist. And so we walk in, and once again, everybody's smiling, and everybody wants to say hey and say welcome, and hey, how's it going? And to the point where I was like, Hannah, if these people keep trying to shake my hand, I'm gonna lose my mind. Um, and I sit down, and I start to think, this church is huge, and how could so many people in here fully believe in a God while I am sitting here in this pew, ready for it to be over, ready to grab lunch, and I'm thinking to myself that he doesn't exist. There's got to be something. There's got to be something here, right? Looking back on it now, I know that was just God softening my heart because I had no business thinking something like that. I had no business um, being so open to the thought of maybe there could potentially be a God. And I think that a big part of that was just this hurt and this fear and frustration and confusion throughout my entire life, um, that I started to really think like, what if? Like, what if? Could this be something that could potentially turn into something? I don't know. And so I remember we went, and I have no idea. It was North Monroe, by the way, the first church I ever attended was North Monroe. And we went, and I have no idea what Pastor Bill said. Honestly, at that point in my life, I could not have cared less. Um, I have no idea what he was talking about. I have no idea what the greeters were saying. I do, however, remember one thing from attending this church service, and that is how how happy people were to see me. And it was crazy because I was not happy to see them. And I'm walking into this building. I'm walking into literally enemy territory. Jesus, at this point in my life, is my enemy. I am behind enemy lines, and the people there are so glad to see me, so happy to see me. And I walked out of that building just in awe of, I walked in there with so much hate in my heart for every person in that room, for the God that they served. And now I'm walking out with just this almost a sense of relief of, these people meet every Sunday and I can come back um, and get that feeling again. And so, and it's really hard for me to sit here on this mic and talk about how much I hated God, because I did. Um, because when I look back on it, I look back and I see this God that just loved me so much. Oh, and that was the first feeling of just genuinely just feeling relaxed and feeling comfortable and welcome in the Lord's presence. And it had it had nothing to do with the people. Like, obviously the people were there and they were the vessels, that they were the ones that made me just feel so kind of comfortable being there. But it was just God softening my heart as I was just sitting in that pew, just festering in my anger, and finally being able to just relax. And so I left there, and I uh, I went back to my dorm. I went back to school as usual. I, went back to the party scene as usual, trying to fulfill myself with drugs and alcohol and acceptance of fraternity brothers, and none of those things hit the feeling that I got from one Sunday sitting in a uncomfortable wooden pew, listening to a random guy on the stage talk about a God who I didn't care about. Which is, I just look back on this, I look back on it, And I'm just so thankful. That's what it is. It's just gratitude as I sit back and I look at all of the things that led me to that church and all of the things that happened in my life before that is just amazing. And I there's a verse, I don't know if I'm allowed to bring out the Bible,
We allow
but
communication. So it's
it's
appropriate.
it's it's Micah chapter 6 verse 5. And it's not like a feel good verse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a it's sort of the history behind it, but it says, "My people," and I'm probably going to butcher these names, but he says, "My people, oh gosh, my people, remember what Balak king of Moab plotted and what Balaam son of Beor answered. Remember your journey from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord." I think about I think about that verse, and it's really the history behind the verse that's so significant. The Lord is telling his people that he delivered them from Shittim to Gilgal. And so what's important about those places is that Shittim was the last encampment in the desert where the Israelites are y'all. I, I just love Jesus, man. Ah, okay.
This is a safe space, so you can cry in
I
here.
know. I have no problem crying in front of people. Anyways, what's significant about that verse is the Lord is talking to his people, the people of Israel and the people of Judah. And he says that, remember whenever I delivered you from Shittim to Gilgal. And what's important about those places is Shittim is the last encampment in the desert where the Israelites are literally wandering through the desert. And it's not exactly the place that you want to be. And I think about my life, and I'm wandering through the desert at this point in my life. I'm just I'm hoping and praying, and really I'm not praying at this point in my life. I'm hoping that things get better, because at that point in my life things are really bad. I'm in the desert, and I'm just searching for a place out or a way out. But what's important about Gilgal is that Gilgal was the first encampment in the promised land. And the way that the Israelites got from Shittim to Gilgal is that the Lord performed this mighty miracle where he parted the Jordan River. And something that only God can do. Nobody else can do this. And they walk from the desert into the promised land on a path that's forged literally by something that only God can do. And I sit back and I look at my own story, and I think about the fact that I could not have done any of these things on my own. I am weak. I am mad. I'm scared. And all I want at this point is for it all to end. And I walked into this church service where people are glad to see me. And that was the turning point for me, was that people want to see me. And so I kind of go back to that lifestyle, that party lifestyle, and it's hard to go back because that feeling, it's not there. It's not there anymore. And so I remember Hannah came every Wednesday. She was working with the children's ministry at the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I had told her, I worked at the swim school, and I worked with Special Olympics of Northwest Louisiana. and I loved it. That's what I was in school for. I was actually in school to go. I really wanted to be a special education teacher. However, there's not a whole lot of money in that, is what I realized, and so I decided to be a youth pastor instead. Uh, no, so I I told her all of these things about how I loved to work with kids and I love to work specifically with special needs kids. I find there so much. Um, s- I just get so much out of it, and I was telling her that, and she came back uh, from Wednesday night at the church, and she said, "Hey, I was wondering, would you want to potentially come up and work at the church?" And I was like, what? At this point, I had maybe been there, let's call it 8 times, like maybe 2 months, because this is a time in my life, like, I'm not about to let this Sunday morning slip away. I'm not letting that feeling get away from me. And I, she said, "Do you want to come work at the church?" And I said, "No, like, absolutely not." Um, there's, and I came up with every reason in the book. Like, I am not qualified. I cannot. I'm not allowed to. God would be mad about that um, because we have a pretty rocky relationship at this point.
Can't even wear my cross necklace.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm you know I'm telling her all of these things about um, why I can't do these things, and she finally says, "Hey, um, there's a special needs kid who um, we really need somebody to just walk around with him. He needs a buddy." And once again, you look back on these things, and I know the Lord was sending me the perfect circumstance to get me in the building. And so I said, "Okay." Um, and so I remember this little boy. I remember his name. I don't want to say his name. Is he is in the area, but um, she told me, "Hey, we have this little boy. He's autistic. We need somebody to walk around with him." And I said, "Okay, fine. I'll be there. I'll go Sunday." And I absolutely loved it. I mean, I loved it. And at this point, I didn't grow up in church. I didn't know the Bible stories. I didn't know all the stuff. And so, um, what was really funny was I would I would sit back and I would get the pre-K3 message. I would just listen to the pre-K3 message, and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, that happened! There was a talking donkey. What?" And I
Are
would
you
go
serious, Clark?
I would go back and I would read these stories, and every single week, like, that was my church. I would literally work with the 3-year-olds, and I would hear their Bible lesson, and I would go home and I would read it and I would look at it and I would study it, and then my 3-year-olds, they moved up to 4-year-olds, and then I moved up with them, and I stayed in 4-year-olds, and once again they're learning all these Bible stories, and I'm going back and I'm learning all these Bible stories, like, at the pace that a kid was, and I look back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, God, you're teaching me and you're building me up, and you're pouring into not just me as Chase, the college student, soon to be adult, but you're pouring into that kid that needed to be poured into." And you think about the fact that God loves every aspect of us. He loves every part of us, and um I think about just learning at the pace that a kid would learn, and then I moved up and I started going to some of the third grade stuff on Wednesday nights, and then I would learn their Bible lessons, and then I started going to, I guess I skipped high school and middle school, but I did volunteer at Emerge, and then I jumped into college, and Cody Albritton was my college pastor, and he poured into me. Oh my gosh, he poured into me, and I had just the most backwards views of everything on the planet, and he, with the power of the Holy Spirit, um, he turned all that around. He basically fixed my focus from wrong to all the wrong things to all the right things. And slowly but surely, as I look back, I just see that the Lord was working on me. The Holy Spirit was working through the people around me, really defining or redefining who I was. And this idea of the thrashing floor, just this refinement of building me up from being a child in the faith to a mature adult. And so um, the problem with everything was, though, that I was not allowing myself to let go of the things that I was still holding on to from my past. And so I found this place that I've got love and I've got joy and I've got um, I've got acceptance and I'm being taught the right things, and I'm being taught that God doesn't hate me. God hasn't overlooked me, but God has instead, He's created, He's given me these experiences so that I can better minister to His people, and I can be there for His people who are hurting in the same way that I was hurting. And I can be that person that I needed whenever I was a kid. And while all of this is happening, while I'm being refined, I still just can't let go of the drugs and the alcohol. And it kind of comes to a head where um, we went to a restaurant here in town. And at this time, I was living in a trailer behind Bayou Bowl. And I loved that trailer. It was amazing. It was a single wide trailer, the floor vents, the everything about that trailer. Y'all, I can't even explain to you how much I love that place. But I really enjoyed it. And one day, the guys from my fraternity, they they called me and they said, "Hey, let's go up to this restaurant." And they did this. I don't know how to explain it. Like um, we went up to this restaurant and there was a lot of alcohol involved, and um, I I don't remember leaving the restaurant. And so what happened was I ended up walking from field house to campus and then walking the back roads all the way down to Bayou Bowl. And I remember I walked into the trailer at probably 1 a.m. And by this time, I was cognizant. I kind of had an understanding of what was going on, and I realized I messed up bad. Um, this was this was idiotic. I was embarrassed. I was I was mad at myself because I had been learning all these amazing things about a God that loves me and who wants a better life for me. And then I'm going to go off and I'm going to do something that's ridiculous. And I just remember I walked into the trailer and Hannah was on the phone, just tears in her eyes, just on the phone. And she says, "Oh my gosh, he's here. I found him. He's here. He's back at the trailer." And um, I just said, just stupid me. I just said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Are you serious? What's going on? That's what you have to say? Like, what's going on?" It's like 1 a.m. and nobody has been able to find you. Nobody has where have you been? And I told her, I was like, I just walked home. I just wasn't in my right state of mind. I walked home, and I mean, I don't know how many miles that is, but I walked home, and she was so hurt. Like, in that moment, I just remember, and I don't think that at that point in my life I had ever caused hurt to another person like that. And she was disappointed and she was frustrated, and she had every right to be. She had every single right to be, because it was a dumb mistake. It was so dumb. And so she left the trailer, and And I come back, or I go to sleep, and I wake up, and she comes over early the next morning, and she just says, "Hey, look, you got to pick. You got to choose. Um, you can either go down that route. You can you know um, you can go down with alcohol and with drugs, and you can live this life that is definitely going to lead to destruction, or you can keep coming to church with me." Not that she was going to try to kick me out of church, but she was saying more so that I needed to make up my mind um, about where
Your allegiance was.
where I was going, where my allegiance was, and um, so I just said, I just don't know what that looks like, and I don't know where to go from here. Well, she said, and I hate to give Jeff Fitzgerald or Corey Taylor or any of those guys any props, but she just said, "Hey, there's a group meeting. There's a group of guys meeting, and why don't you go?" And I said, "My gosh." Once again, in parentheses, disgust. Um, I had just gotten into Monroe. I say just, I mean, this was a couple years into my walk. And so, but in the long range, I just gotten into Monroe, and they started a group called More Than Conquerors. And it was Jeff Fitzgerald, it was Corey Taylor, Jonathan Halley. I think Kenneth Halley was there as well. Like, there were some godly men, and I did not like to be around men. I didn't. It was just, seeing my relationship with my own dad, and I still had some weariness with this idea of a heavenly Father, and it was just hard for me to sit in a room full of men and and look at them as anything other than my own dad, or as this heavenly Father that I've run from for so long. And so I sat down with these guys, More Than Conquerors, and the whole idea was, let's sit and talk about where you are. And I saw just vulnerability, and I saw love and kindness, and all of these attributes that I really hadn't seen in a man before. Um, and I came to the realization that a real man, a real man is not angry all the time. A real man um, doesn't put people down. A real man follows Jesus, loves the people around him. I would say that a real man loves, and loves well. A real man would lead with love. And um, this was the first time that I'd ever seen a man lead with love. In this group, More Than Conquerors, it was a group of guys, and we sat together, and we prayed together, and we cried together. And I realized that not all dads were bad. Um, and so from there, I called Cody, and I just said, "Hey, I want to sit down, and I want to talk about this. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, but I want to talk about this." And he said, "Let's meet. Let's go. Let's meet tomorrow. Like, that's perfect." And so I want to say we met like on a Sunday night or a Sunday afternoon, or no, More Than Conquerors was on a Sunday afternoon, and then so it was Saturday. I walked home from Bayou Bowl. More Than Conquerors was on Sunday. On Monday, I went and talked to Cody, and I put it all out on the line. I just said, I got to make a choice, and I've got to make this decision. And I've decided I want my decision to be Jesus, um, because all of these things, all of these worldly things, have always been, they've all been conditional. I can have love here if I do this thing. I can be loved here, and I can be accepted and appreciated here if I do this thing. But with Jesus, it's love first, and then change second. And all of these other places was, if you change, then I'll love you. And Jesus accepted me as I am. And I sat down with Cody, and I prayed. I prayed that Jesus would be my Lord and Savior. I prayed that I would be able to say no to this drugs and alcohol that's plaguing my life. I just prayed for a no. And I gave my life to Jesus. And I was baptized in, it was August. It was August of 2018. And from that point, I mean, it was a whole new thing. You know, I had been, learning all these stories and kind of building up to this point to where I could appease this God that I at this point now wanted his love. But now, after this understanding that the love comes first and the change comes second, I've realized that, or in that moment, I realized that that's what I wanted. I wanted Jesus, and I went away from, I was learning about Jesus or about God to appease God. And then now, after I've come to this relationship with Jesus, I've started to read the scripture and learn about God to just see what the extent of his love is. And there isn't one. And I love that this never-ending well, this just vast sea of love that just a never-ending sea of love that every believer has access to.
Yeah,
I just love it.
it's so good.
Yeah,
I love even just the like going back to your first encounter with like working with the kids, of like the beauty of like he draws you into this place that you can find purpose.
Yeah.
Because that's like was a big thing for you in your story, like earlier on in your adolescence, but then like also like sort of in a kind of funny way, like gives you those pieces of childhood that you felt like you had missed. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like it's almost like that's the way it went, and so just so cool. And then plugging you in with the right, I think the things that you were grappling with at the beginning of your story of like, okay, either he doesn't care about me or he's not real. And like for him to show you that he is real, and then to point back at all the places that he did pursue you, didn't just care, but like worked on your behalf, is just like so cool to me.
I always say that Jesus revealed himself to me through the kids that I worked with. And it's just really amazing to look back. That verse that I read earlier from Micah chapter 6 verse 5, it starts off with God telling his people what all he's done for them, and reminding them what all he's done for them. He says that I brought you out of Egypt, I redeemed you from slavery, I sent Moses to lead you. And then he says, I led you from the desert into the promised land. And
they were angry through a lot of that. They were not happy about all of it.
So, but yeah, and that's my story. I just, I look back on that, and I just see, throughout the course of my life, all of the things that I said would never happen, right? I would never get married. Absolutely not. I'd never get married. The Lord has blessed me with this wonderful wife who always is pouring into me, who is always just so good to me. And then I said to myself, God, you may have given me a wife who I am now partial to, but you will never get a child from me. And here I am with just the single most beautiful child on the planet Earth. I mean, beautiful, beautiful child. And he's just silly and he's funny, he's crazy, he's just so active. And I mean, here I am just looking at all of the times that I have wrestled with God, saying, God, you don't exist. Here he is, plain as day, he exists. God, you will never get me in your church. Here I am in his church. God, you will never be able to soften my heart. And there he is, softening my heart. And God, you will never give me a wife. You'll never give me a kid. You'll never give me a happy life. You'll never. And every single time he does. And that's I guess the theme is just wrestling with God is just me. I've always wrestled. So
I love that. It's so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, you have no idea how powerful that was to everyone listening, I mean, just whether it was their story or someone they're praying for, like just so just so real. It was just so real and so relevant to so many people. And we're just really appreciative of you coming and sharing today.
Well, I really appreciate y'all having me. I had a good time. I just hope that maybe we can get Corey Seeger to reach out and
next week on the Saltworks.
Look, if Corey Seeger is on Saltworks, I'm sitting there.
Yeah, you co-host that one.
I'm sitting right there.
You can actually host because I don't know what I would ask. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Chase, seriously, for coming. And thank y'all so much for listening in to the Saltworks this week, and we will see you next week on the Saltworks.
This is my story. This is your story.